So do you know that Nollywood, Nigerian film industry, is the second largest in the world? Do you also know that Nollywood wasn't given to Nigeria by Nigerians? And the industry is projected to become a billion-dollar global powerhouse. Now let's explore how Nollywood went from a low-budget industry to a high-budget industry. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Imoitinya and I'm a visual storyteller who happens to be visually impaired, and I love to cover African stories, right? But if you've been following me for quite a while, you would notice that I break all the rules. So I particularly tell stories that I'm very connected to, right? Today's episode though, I really want to give a massive thank you to the New York Times because I use this article, and also OK Africa, I use this article from their website to tell or to gather or to put together today's episode. So let's jump right into the story. So the first ever film that was produced in Nigeria was done by a British filmmaker. His name was Zoltan Koda, and this was in 1926, and it was a silent short film where he used non-professional Nigerian actors to tell the story. Now, this particular film wasn't a blockbuster. In fact, it was terrible. It was awful. It did not do very well. However, though, it became the start of filmmaking in Nigeria. The second film that was produced was called Sandals of the Rivers. Now, that one was produced by an Hungarian British filmmaker whose name was Godfrey Bakas. Now, this film was the cast in this film were mainly African American. Now, this particular film did extremely well. In fact, the director ended up getting nominated at Venice Film Festival. Between the 1930s and the 1940s, cinema came in form of plays such as travel theater groups, and these plays were sponsored by churches, courts, and also audiences as well. Now, around the same period, though, Nigeria was looking towards gaining its independence from Britain, which they did in 1960. And the same time, though, sparked local filmmaking and also began the rise of the Nigerian film industry. So between the 1960s and the 1970s, there were influx of foreign movies, right? Movies from the US, movies from China, movies from India, and all of these different respective superstars dominated the national stage. And what was happening around this period was local filmmakers weren't given a chance to produce film any longer because these stars were well known in Nigeria. Now, something incredible happened in 1972. The president at the time, Yakubu Gowon, signed something called the Genization Decree, which basically granted 300 theaters back to Nigerian local filmmakers. And that encouraged them to begin creating film all over again. Now, this particular incident reminds me of something that happened in Zimbabwe when the white people came and took all the land, and then Mugabe decided to give some of the land back to its own people. That's the same thing that happened with filmmaking in Nigeria. So in the 90s, the Nigerian film industry became lucrative. And at this particular season, or this particular era, I should say, we move into the phase of CDs and VHS, right, which is a video home service. So we had a lot of places in Nigeria then where we can rent CDs or rent movies, and lots of Nigerians were doing that. This was also an important season for Nollywood film because it was when the first ever home video was produced. And it was produced by a guy named Chris Obi Rapport. And the title of the movie was called Living in Bondage, and it was a two-part film, which was pretty scary as a kid. I remember watching that, and I don't remember much as an adult. I don't think I would ever want to watch it though. But it was a blockbuster success. This was the movie that opened the door for lots of local filmmakers to begin to create film. And the stories were by Nigerians for Nigerians to Nigerians. It was pretty authentic in that manner. However, though, the technicality wasn't their strength because they weren't looking for perfection. They were looking to just tell African stories. So this same period, we began to see celebrities, right? We began to see the Naija celebrities, such as the Genevieve, the Omotolas, the Ransom Noah, the, who else was there? The Richard Mofeda Mijo. All these guys were the ones who actually began to help develop the Nigerian film industry. But as the film industry was booming, something crazy began to happen that ultimately led to the falling of the industry again. And that was piracy. Piracy was a big deal simply because people would buy film and they would duplicate the film that they've bought and they will begin to sell that. And one of the places people were going to buy these duplicated DVDs or CDs was the Alaba International Market. That market was hectic. But anyhow, though, all of these different scenarios, filmmakers were making films, about 400 films a year. Depending on the producers or the directors, you're producing like 3 or 4 films per 3 or 4 films a week, but they weren't making any money. So as a result, the film industry collapsed. In the early 2000s, the Nigerian film industry rose again. Now this time around, though, they became very strict with production. For example, distribution was extremely strict, and also filmmakers began to hone their technical skills. So now they are now beginning to produce high budget film. But this was also a period where Nigerians or Nollywood itself was gaining a global attention, right? A New York Times journalist by the name Norishisu Onishi visited Nigeria to document the evolution of Nollywood. His article, Step Aside LA and Bombay for Nollywood, was when the first use of Nollywood is documented. I know, but we still don't know who gave us Nollywood, and it is indeed a controversial conversation today. But Nigerians have taken this name and they have owned it and also used it as part of the movie industry's identity. So in 2009, this was when Nigerian filmmakers began to produce high-budget film. So the first ever film that was nationally, credited for that high-budget film was called Figurine, and it was produced by a Nigerian director called Kunle Afolayan. And Figurine gained not only a national success in Nigeria, but an international success as well. So in 2016, The Wedding Party was released. Now this one was a big deal because it was my American friend who told me about this movie. And for me personally, it really introduced me to the fact that Nigerian movies are beginning to gain a global recognition because, hey, I live in the States. And this movie had several producers, and the star of this movie was Banky's wife, Adesua. It was pretty successful as well. So today, Nigerian films are being streamed on mainstream platforms like YouTube, Netflix, and Prime. So it has become a global powerhouse, giving us global audiences, right? And also Netflix is one of the biggest investors when it comes to Nollywood films. In fact, so far, they have contributed 23.6 million into the Nollywood industry and filmmaking. It is quite remarkable to watch this and also to watch Nollywood grow, and also, honest to God, to cover this particular story was quite enlightening for me, simply because it allows you to know. There's this saying that I would tell you, it goes like this: when you look at a king, you would never think if one sucked his mother's breast. I know that sounds so raw, but just to let you know that every person starts from somewhere and everyone has a beginning. Just like Nollywood industry, it has its humble beginnings. It was pretty crazy and it went up and down, side and left, almost collapsed several times. But at the end of the day though, they're doing extremely well around the world. And right now, filmmakers are shooting for a higher success, such as the Oscars. And hey, at this point, nothing is impossible when it comes to filmmaking, right? I do want to thank you all for watching. If you really enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Do not forget to share your comments below and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.